So the bottom line is it was a fail, didn't work. So the point is that depleted calories long-term doesn't work. We know that from diets as well. The metabolism slows down, the body goes into a catabolic state. But we're seeing the same thing today with a lot of the intermittent fasting and the popularity of fasting. So we need the feast days. If you remind periodically the body it's not starving, magic happens.
What if aging isn't about slowing down, but leveling up? I'm Dr. Isaac Jones, one of the world's leading longevity doctors and someone that's invested millions of my own money into cracking the code on longevity. This is the Longevity Leaders Podcast. Join me and my co-hosts, Dr. Rudy, Dr. Ashley, as we interview the world's top doctors, scientists, and practitioners, sharing the latest breakthroughs in longevity and regenerative medicine. If you're ready to optimize your health, your performance, and your longevity, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Longevity Leaders Podcast. I'm Dr. Isaac Jones, and this episode is part of our exclusive series recorded at the Exponential Longevity Summit, a global gathering of cutting-edge health experts exploring the edge of human performance, health span, and longevity. Let's get into it.
One of the things I love about Dan is he is just a student of longevity because he's a student of what causes chronic disease, and he's obviously lived a pretty challenging life dealing with a lot of health challenges himself. But through that, he's learned a lot, and he's also connected with some of the top people in the longevity space, stem cell experts, exosome experts, technology experts. And when you go to his house, where I've been multiple times, there's like a Tesla coil in the middle of his room that's like giving off all this cool radiation, healthy frequency. And then I like hurt my knee. So he's like, oh, just come into my bathroom. And he's doing PRP into my knee. Do you remember that, Dan?
I do. I do.
It was so funny. But, I'm excited to have this conversation with you. This is going to go out. We've got around 100 members in the longevity practitioner certification, and then the continuity program after that's called Longevity Leaders. And just excited to tap into your brain. I personally have been super blessed by Dan Pompa. Before he was one of my best friends, he was a mentor of mine, and he was speaking at a big doctors conference, and I was just a student, like in the audience, and I was so blown away with him, and I was so excited about what he was talking about. I followed him to the bathroom.
True.
He was like peeing, and I was like, will you be my mentor? I want you to like coach me. And Dan was just like, he's like, I don't have time. He's like, I'm sorry. I'm like, what about 5 minutes? I'm like, you have 5 minutes once a month? He's like, yeah, 5 minutes once a month. And then of course, like 2 weeks later, I'm at his house and like, living with him and his kids.
I think I left that and I said, that boy is going to be successful at whatever he does, because he was relentless. And that is part of why he's so successful. He's also resourceful, and he's absolutely an initiator. So Isaac tracked me down, and it was a blessing. I'm so glad he did, because we've been friends ever since. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, let's get into longevity. And if we do have any time, Dan is probably the fastest growing number one, brand online in natural health right now. You've gone from like 100,000 people on Instagram to like 800 or 700,000 this year. You are, you're also on track to do some insane numbers, from a financial perspective. So maybe we save a little time at the end just to share a little bit about what you're doing there. But let's get into your kind of longevity story, and as it relates to cellular health and cellular optimization, which you become a global leader in. Where do you want to start?
Yeah. It chose me. I didn't choose it. And that was way back in 1999 when I started getting sick, unknowing to me what was going on. Like so many people today. Matter of fact, what I was going through then, very few people were going through. Today, now it's ridiculous how many people are going, and everything God taught me going through it. And that's the only way I learned it, by the way, is to go through it. And, here we are today, with so many people that need what I learned during that. And by the way, those were prophetic words spoken to my wife, that, things got really bad and I couldn't work like I was. And, I definitely wasn't the father that I needed to be or the husband. And, her crying out to God on her knees, God spoke to her heart, said, not only am I going to get him well, but he's going to take a message to the world. And that never went over well with me at all, because in my mind, I couldn't even get myself well, let alone step up to that calling. So, that never was good. But if you knew my wife, like Isaac does,
I
she's
do.
very persistent. It's like, and she's just, I would have saved it for probably better times to speak those words to me, but not her. Boy, she spoke them right at me. But that's a good thing. Now, she was right. I'm taking a message to the world. That's how I got here. And again, it came out of what God showed me. And so many people today. I mean, again, my Instagram grew. I mean, I'll be at 1 million followers next week. And he's right. 5 months ago, I was at 100,000. I hate social media. I hate doing it. My older son, who's CEO of the company, made my younger son do it, and he made me do it. Meaning, like he said, he gets bonused on if he films you. So literally to help him. So people said, "Oh, you started social media because you wanted to help people." I'm like, "No, not at all. I wanted to help one person." And that was my son Simon, because I had no belief that 1 minute videos could make a difference. I was wrong. But anyways, needless to say, all of that information, that I speak and teach, came out of it. I'm called to it. And yeah, I mean, every thing that people are going through, when I talk about on Instagram, that's what I was going to say. So much of it is, here is the toxins that we're unknowingly exposed to today. I just did a video about how these plastics are crossing the testicular blood barrier, and in the male testicles, and leading to the massive decline in testosterone, lowest testosterone in history of humankind right now, and sperm count, lowest, infertility, right? And then what do we have? Even in our space, we have people trying to feel better, get better perhaps from taking hormones, although bioidentical, still not the problem. We're inundated with neurotoxins that when I do these videos and I research it, I myself am blown away about just what we're up against. I feel when I do these educational videos, it's like I feel silly talking about diet change sometimes, because it's almost become irrelevant. People can't change their diets anymore and just lose weight and feel
Right.
better, right? It's a different game than it was even 10 years ago. And it's like, if you look at the amount of plastic, I mean, you know this, you've heard it, a credit card a week we take into our bodies, right? A credit card, that much plastic a week, 5 grams to be exact. When you look at what's accumulating, and then when you look at the amount of glyphosate that opens up our protective barriers, and then when you look at the amount of heavy metals, now the aluminum that they're putting in jet fuel, it just makes the jet fuel more efficient. Bromine as well. It's part of the formula. It saves them billions of dollars. This is no conspiracy to kill us, although it is, but that aluminum's falling down into our food supply, into our water supply, taking in aluminum, the mercury that we're already exposed to, because we and our mothers had silver fillings, and that mercury goes into the brain. We have aluminum and mercury, perfect storm combination. And we wonder why dementia and everything brain related is going through the roof. The anxiety, people can't sleep, the gut problems. And I feel like, again, when we look at aging prematurely, we're looking at this accumulation of senescent cells that don't work, cells that live too long. The DNA is broken, right? It's like, we know that people with these types of cells, age sooner. They have more chronic diseases. They have more, all increase in mortality, but yet, well, what are we trying to do about it? Because if we don't get to the real causes that I just discussed, then ultimately, we're not only going to age faster than normal, despite our collagen, despite our diet, despite our wonderful supplements that we're taking. We're going to age, but we're going to be subject to the number one killer, chronic inflammation, which will present itself in your genetic weakness, whether it be heart attack, stroke, you name it, cancer, so, ultimately, yeah, there's things that we can do. Fasting, right? Of course, we want to eat a better diet. Of course, we want to drink cleaner water, but ultimately, cellular detox, everything that I learned through my illness now applies to what's happening today. And I would never make the statement that I have all the answers, but I know this, I have a very key piece of what most people are missing.
Yeah, no, it's so good. And we see the demasculinization of men, and women are, having just unbelievable hormone dysregulation as well. And you've got, on top of that, one of the biggest, causes of joint injuries is the glyphosate in the joints that are actually that's causing the actual ligaments and the tendons to become brittle.
Yeah.
Right. So this is a huge problem. Clinically, that's what people are seeing. When it comes to senescent cells, what do you feel like, accelerates the development of senescent cells, when it comes to cellular toxicity and some of these things? And what have you found are some of the best ways to, to cleanse the body of senescent cells? Do you think that, taking senolytics, do you believe that taking, or doing some of these ionophoresis and blood, when you're filtering out the blood, et cetera? What are your thoughts on some of these things now?
Yeah, look, I think they all work. They can be very expensive, right? And you could be against, a force that is so much greater than you could throw money at. I was in one of Rafael Gonzalez's natural killer cells. He did a whole study on it. My wife and I were in that study, and every natural killer cell, which what you do is they take your natural killer cells, they expand them, and then they inject them back into you from the millions to the billions. And natural killer cells really are one of the most, if not the most effective way to lower senescent cells. But again, it's in the study, the people that didn't pay attention to the toxic exposures in their life, they didn't have the massive declines that my wife and I had. So what it shows you is that, you have to deal with the very causative factors that are driving the rapid increase in these cells that live too long, zombie cells, if you will, DNA damage, the toxins driving the DNA damage, and obviously keeping these cells from basically apoptosis. Look, be clear though, there's a reason for senescent cells. There's actually a purpose for them, but it's the too many in the acceleration of them that's bad. The body can utilize a senescent cell, and innate intelligence is, can do that. So there's studies out there that show a benefit to what they actually do in the body, but the body should get rid of them at a very consistent rate through apoptosis. And when that doesn't happen, these cells live too long, and that becomes a problem with premature aging and leads to other diseases. But, just even COVID, there was the first study that was young people who got hit hard by COVID. 35 years old, you should have got COVID like a flu and went through it, right? But people that got hit hard, they showed that they had more senescent cells. And these were people who would be like, I'm healthy, but they didn't know that they had more senescent cells. That probably wouldn't have shown up for 20, 30 years into their life. So it's significant. And the answer to the other part of your question, fasting does get rid of senescent cells, right? Fasting will take down the bad and, repopulate the good via stem cells, right? So fasting is the cheapest way of getting rid of them. And yes, extended fasts are absolutely better than daily fast. We get some autophagy and some senescent cell drop with 14-hour fasts and above. That's been proven. But that when you compare it to an extended fast, then it's really not comparable. Extended fast do cause more decrease.
What would your fasting protocol be for us if you were just to give us just a general fasting protocol? What would it be? As an example, I like to intermittent fast, other than when I'm giving my kids pancakes on the weekends or something like that. And then we do like a month kind of extended fast for 3 days. But like, what do you recommend?
Yeah, look, I prefer 5-day extended fasts only because most people, you and I, probably many people on this call, can benefit from a 3-day fast because we go into max autophagy, most of us on day 1 or 2. But the average person doesn't get into max autophagy until day 3 or 4. And there's a way to figure that out. We can get with looking at ketone and glucose numbers. But the fact is that therefore you want to continue a fast to get at least 1 or 2 days when you're in max autophagy, where your body's just crushing bad cells. So more just extending it a little longer, you can hit that sweet spot. Ultra longo, I have done 5-day fasts for many years just because we realized that people don't feel good until day 4. Let's carry it one more day, right? And also learning that most people to do even fast beyond that, they start to not do as well, right? They release a little too many toxins. So we ended up on this sweet spot of 5 days. And then Longo's work showed that 5 days was a sweet spot. So, that was like, oh, okay, well, I just had clinical experience to tell me that. I've been into fasting since the 90s. But you know what I found today? When I was into fasting, nobody was into fasting. And, it was just some of the Natural Hygiene Society people that were vegans. I didn't really fit into those people, but I would go and learn. I traveled around and went to all the big fasting clinics. I loved it. Years ago, I met Joel Furman and all these, the guys that were like really into the Natural Hygiene Society and fasting. But, today it's in vogue. But here's what I find. People are fasting too much. And even now with intermittent fasting, they're fasting too much. And I did an Instagram video because Mark Wahlberg does exactly my eating plan, and he's into lifting and maintaining muscle. And he mixes it up. So 4 days a week, what Mark does is he doesn't eat. He does a little bit of intermittent fasting, but in his eating window of 6 hours, he eats a lot of calories because he's trying to get bigger, I guess, right? So he eats a lot of calories in a 6-hour window. And then he has one day where he fasts. He just does 24 hours. He does one meal. And then he has another day where he eats all day. That's exactly what I do, but I mix it up even probably a little more. But the point is, as Isaac said, hey, on the weekends, I have pancakes with my kids. That's actually working for him. Because the point is when people are intermittent fasting like they are today, the body starts to think it's starving. And even on intermittent fasting continually, the longer you do it, the more muscle people seem to lose. And when you go to the seminars, you can see them. You know who they are because they start to look at have a gaunt look, like the vegan look used to take on. And the fact is that I want to scream from stage, y'all need more feast days. The feast is as important as the fast. And that's something that I'm screaming louder than ever now. The feast is important as the fast. It's like the anti-aging group, they talk about how protein can age you prematurely because of mTOR. That's a true statement, partly.
Yeah.
But short terms of mTOR stimulation via high protein is actually extremely healing and doesn't age you prematurely. Now, if you stay in a high protein diet deriving mTOR, yes, you will affect all of those things that will speed up premature aging. But here's the problem. In a fasting state too, if y'all, I don't know, I'll probably age myself here, but the Biosphere 2 project was very popular. And this is when they first discovered that cutting calories by 30% basically triggered the SIRT1 gene, longevity gene, and triggered that, and people would live longer. At least they did it with animals, etc. So they did it. They got into this biosphere. I think there was 8 people at the time, and they measured all of their parameters, right? And they ate the perfect vegan diet at a 30% reduction of calories. 2 years, complete fail.
Wow.
So it triggered the SIRT1 gene, that longevity gene. However, all the other parameters as far as health actually went in the wrong direction. Matter of fact, their organs shrunk. They were in a catabolic state. They lost muscle. They had more aches and pains. They were absolutely declining. Their immune systems all were suffering. They all came out compromised immunity, and some even going hyper. So their immune systems got confused. But they triggered the SIRT1 gene. Maybe they'll live longer. No, they would have died of infectious disease if they lived, in any type of culture or any type of ancient culture. So the bottom line is it was a failed, didn't work. So the point is that depleted calories long-term doesn't work. We know that from diets as well. The metabolism slows down, the body goes into a catabolic state. But we're seeing the same thing today with a lot of the intermittent fasting and the popularity of fasting. So we need the feast days. If you remind periodically the body it's not starving, magic happens. So 1, 2, and by the way, girls, sometimes, some of you are familiar with Mindy Peltz. She was my student, and everything she teaches today, we discovered as a group when, teaching the group that I taught. And, it's the fact is women oftentimes need more feast days to be successful at fasting. So, understand that can look like weekly, where maybe you do 2 or 3 feast days a week, and then 1 or 2 days where you eat one meal or in a window of 4 to 6 hours, whatever that means to you. But the fact is those feast days are more dramatic and important than you think. And some of you are familiar with Karen Verde because maybe you read her studies, and she was one of the first to show that this feast famine, where they did standard American diet, feast, famine, standard American diet, famine, actually worked better for breaking through weight loss resistance than any other diet that they compared it to. Why? Because the feast famine causes the body, through a process or a principle called hormesis, to have to adapt. And how does it adapt? It does it through a hormone optimization. So feast famine, actually, there is a hormone optimization that takes place to adapt to the stress of that diet change, the feast famine. Our bodies are designed that way. So we can duplicate this even monthly. So if you do a 5-day fast, and again, women, around your period, it's not ever good to 5-day fast before your cycle. It's better to 5-day fast at other times or even during your cycle. But the fact is that if you do a 5-day fast, we've learned to throw in at least 5 days of feasting, whether that be high protein, whether it be high healthy carbs, whatever, or just more frequent eating. All of those things can represent a feast, which can drive mTOR, which drives this feast-famine cycle, which drives hormone optimization, and even an increase in diversity of the microbiome. So, this diet variation strategies, I've been teaching for longevity, and I've been teaching for, many years, just for obvious reasons. Our ancestors were forced to do it. We, unfortunately, have to learn to do it because we always have food. We always have the same foods. And that's a problem too, right? Because we always have the same foods, and foods that aren't changing with the way our environment is changing. So anyways, there's a lot there. I just threw so much.
No, yeah, that was really great. And I just, fasting is one element. And I love all of the customization we just talked about. And even the point that you made around the cycle, that women shouldn't fast before their period. We had done a panel at the Disrupt Clinical Longevity event with Dave Asprey and Todd O and Hamel Patel and then the women there, Sandra Kaufman and some other longevity experts were saying, you typically want to be fasting the first half of your cycle, and then the second half you are more into the feasting kind of state. But that is a huge kind of thing to be thinking about, is how do we customize for both men and women? And just, if you could just share, what are some of the longevity customizations that you would make for men versus women? What would they be?
Yeah, look, I think men can get away with a little more fasting oftentimes than women. However, men with thyroid challenges or adrenal challenges definitely need more feast days. I don't care if you're a man or a woman. And again, I've heard bold blanket statements that if you have a thyroid condition, you should never fast. If you have adrenal, you should never fast. It's not true. It's how you fast, how long you fast, and how many feast days you have. So keep this in mind. A principle that I love teaching from, and I mentioned it once, is hormesis. Hormesis simply means if we stress a biological system, that if that biological system adapts, it gets stronger. If it doesn't adapt, it gets weaker. So that is a very, very important principle that I live my life by. I exercise by that. I eat by that. I do biohacks by that. Let me give you an example. So you can totally understand the principle this way. And exercise is probably the easiest way because we all do it. So if you're a brand new person to exercise and you exercise like Isaac, you're probably going to cause more damage than good. You're probably not going to adapt, and it's going to be a negative. If you're a trained athlete and you don't exercise enough, then you're probably not going to stress the body enough to actually even get a benefit. You're not going to get stronger or weaker. So you see there's a balance. That's the premise of hormesis. Now let's apply it to cold baths. So it's very popular doing cold plunges today, but most people are actually doing worse by themselves because of the premise of hormesis, meaning they get in there. We all know that how it works. It works because your body thinks it's going to die. And then it upregulates norepinephrine, which upregulates growth hormone, and all this hormone optimization happens. And your body saves its life, downregulates inflammation, hormone optimization. Wonderful if, the key word here is if, you adapt to that stress. And most people don't, because they read that do 3 minutes like Ben Greenfield or Isaac Jones or, this person, that person. Okay. 3 minutes is a long time. And most people are not healthy enough to adapt to such a stress. And so they go through this process and they end up on the other side, non-adapted. What does that mean? That means you end up in more of a state of inflammation later instead of less. That means you don't sleep as well that night. You just don't get into a deeper sleep. If you measured your sleeping, you would see your heart rate variability plummeted and your heart rate went up. It means you didn't adapt. How do you know? Well, how did you feel later that day and how do you feel the next day? If you have no way of measuring, your biomarkers, if you had no way of measuring your heart rate variability, how do you feel? Yeah, you're right. I was more tired. It's just like a workout, right? If you don't adapt, you're more tired. Good athletes actually need to hire trainers. You know why? They do two things. Number one, they vary your workout so it becomes a perception of stress to your body. That will make you stronger. They make you do things to help you adapt to increasing stress so you get stronger, and they also tell you to stop, slow down. And they put in there times of high intensity, low intensity. I was a cyclist. We would go high intensity for periods and low intensity for periods. As a matter of fact, if you look, the Tour de France is going on now, and they interviewed one of the trainers, the best trainers. He said most of these guys, they go 10% of their training is high intensity. The other 90%, and he was simplifying it, is very low intensity. It's like that 10% is, because they can't overstress the body is the point, but they use that 10. And if you're not training at that level, maybe 20% high intensity, to actually get the body to adapt. And that's the whole important thing here. So anyways, fasting, to bring it now in this light of fasting. Fasting is a stress. It's a great stress and people don't understand it. So the only way you benefit from fasting is adapt. So that means we can't apply the same fast, whether you're men or women. And that's the question was asked. We can't apply the same fast to Jim, to Mary, to Jerry, to Joe, okay? Because they all are in a different place in their stress cycle. If you're under more stress, fast less, okay? If you're feel healthy, and it's kind of opposite sometimes. Sometimes we're under more stress and we end up fasting and it's too much stress and you don't adapt and you get worse. So, we have to take a fast and treat it like exercise. Where are you in your fasting strength? Where are you in your fasting fitness, right? Because maybe partial fasting is the only thing you should do. Walter Longo, I love him. Okay, he put fasting on the board. However, he goes, water fasting's bad because they took average Americans and they water fasting compared to partial fasting, and they got better results with partial fasting. Well, yeah, because most Americans have, horrible ability to use fat as energy, and they don't enter autophagy and they'll burn muscle too long. So of course, that's why I teach that start most people in partial fasts. Do y'all know what partial fasts are? Do you know what that is?
Share what a partial fast is.
Okay. A partial fast is getting your calories under at least 1,000. Now, body size matters. If you're a big dude, 1200 may put you in a partial fast. If you're a small girl, you might have to go as low as 500. So calories, we want somewhere between 500 and 1,000, right? Depending on body size. Protein will knock you out of autophagy, right? So we have to lower protein on average 15 to 20 grams a day. That's a partial fast. You could design it around whatever foods you like, and just play by those rules. And now you're in a partial fast. And partial fasting, you get tremendous amounts of autophagy. And the reason partial fasting is good is because it is less stress. So most people do actually get more autophagy, get rid of more bad cells during a partial fast. And that was Walter's study, than even a water fast. Now, once you advance, water fasting is that's like doing high interval training. And I mean, that's like another level that you can evolve into, that would be more effective for people who are very efficient at burning fat for energy. So fasting has to be treated very different, depending on who you are. So I don't care if you're male or female, as long as you apply that premise of hormesis to a fast. And this is what I tell people, the client that's before you, the patient, the client, whoever's before you look at that person and you're assessing, just like a trainer would, you're assessing their health, their metabolic health, their all-around health, their toxicity. And then you will adapt their fasting schedule, feast-famine schedule, to their health fitness or metabolic fitness or whatever you want to call it. But that's really the best way. So I don't oftentimes like breaking it down men and women. I like breaking it down because many women can fast way better than many men because they're just more metabolically fit. Their mitochondria are better. They go right into max autophagy day one. But there are some general rules. Most women, right, won't be able to deal with the amount of fasting, and cycles play into that. So we want to talk about that, but there. So that, I hope that answers the question.
No, it's great. Real quickly, let's say we've got a woman who's of reproductive years. She's got adrenal fatigue. She's got thyroid. How would you customize the best fasting if you were just to take that client as an example?
Yeah, look, and again, you start slow and low. You start with some, you can always look, I like to see how people, let me back up. I like to see how people are fat adapted first. So I like to put people in a ketotic state. Ketosis is not a diet, it's a metabolic state. And again, this breaks into a whole nother principle that I teach, is that people should never stay in any one diet too long, right? When keto, Isaac will tell you, I've been teaching keto for so many years, but I never, ever, ever taught you stay in a keto diet. Never. And you should never stay in a carnivore diet, right? And that's, I was very critical of people, and the reason why people, and you should never stay in a vegan vegetarian diet. There's flaws to all of that. And by the way, these groups, they will criticize and they'll talk about the studies showing that keto carnivore too long, causes these problems, even leads to cancer. That's actually true. When you do that, there's a 4-hydroxynonenalone. It's a nasty free radical that the longer you're low carb, especially, keto or carnivore, the higher this goes. And it absolutely does age you prematurely and can lead to cancer. There's studies are clear on that. But see, what they do then is they throw the whole diet out. They say keto causes cancer. Carnivore, okay, it's not true. It's too long. And again, vegan vegetarian diets are fine if you do them short periods of time because they're like fasts, right? You go into a state of autophagy, but if you do them long term, as we already discussed, you will end up in a state of max catabolic state and too much autophagy too long, just like too much mTOR too long. And just in review, fasting stimulates a pathway called autophagy where your body goes catabolic. It's good short term. Feasting stimulates mTOR, which is it drives anabolic, right? Bodybuilders love mTOR because they get bigger, but that too long is bad. So think of diets of what pathways that they stimulate, and it'll teach you. You don't want to be in any one diet too long. Okay. So all that to say, where was I going with that, Isaac? Because there was a better point, but I wanted you to understand.
Yeah, the woman who's reproductive
Yes.
years with adrenal fatigue and thyroid.
Right. Yes. So again, I would start them slow and low. And again, I would start them by putting them in ketosis. That's where I was at first. Why? because I want to see their mitochondria's ability to burn fat as an energy source. The people here, right here, if we all went into ketosis today, we would see varying results. Some of us, by the end of today, would have ketones of 1.1. Some of us would have ketones of 0.001. Okay. I mean, by 3 days, we would still see varying results. Some of our ketones would be 2.0, some would be 1.5, some would be 1, some would be still 0.01. Okay. The point is the 0.01 people, when we're looking at these ketones, they are not burning fat for energy. So what are they using for energy? They're typically burning their muscle through a gluconeogenesis, or they're dumping glucose from the liver. The point is they're not efficiently breaking into using fat for energy. I would never start those people in a water fast. I would start them very gently into either a partial fast, or I would keep them in ketosis for a month or two, watching those numbers. Some of your clients will never break through into ketosis. So therefore, we stop it. We go back into a higher healthy carbohydrate diet. They're immediately going to feel better. 2 months down the road, we enter back into ketosis. And here's what's always happens. Now we start to see better numbers. Maybe not perfect, but better numbers. So we stop it again after a month. And then maybe 2 months later, we go back in it a third time. Each time, their mitochondria, I call it mitochondrial fitness. Each time their mitochondria are getting better and more fit. And then therefore now, after 3 months, maybe 4 months of doing this, now I would start them into some partial fasting. Maybe it's, 3 or 4 days of a partial fast. Maybe they make it 5 because their ketones are going up very nicely. So again, I would start that person most likely in a fat adapted diet like ketosis, testing their ability to use fat for energy. And that is usually a good test to whether they're going to hit max autophagy. So quickly in your notes, how do you know if someone's in max autophagy? So you can check yourself on your next, fast, whether it be a partial fast or a water fast. So you look at your ketone and glucose and you want a 1-to-1 ratio. Here's the problem. You have to take glucose. So you do your finger prick with a meter that does ketones and glucose, right? Like Keto Mojo. You take your morning number before you drink your coffee or do anything. First thing, glucose. Let's say it's 80. Okay. Ketones. Let's just say it's 1.5. Okay. So then you're going to take that 80 number, divide it by 18. That gives you the equivalent to compare it to your ketones. Okay. So I can't do the math right now, but whatever that is, let's say, so what we're looking for is 2.0, 2.0, 1-to-1, 3.0, 3.0, 1-to-1, a 1-to-1 ratio, wherever your numbers are. But what you find is the more efficient you are, ketones go up, glucose goes down, and then eventually you hit that 1-to-1 ratio, which is max autophagy. Some people, they'll never hit it until they become more efficient. Some people hit it day 1, day 2, day 3, but again, that number is important because we want to see ketones trending up, glucose trending down in any fasted state. And I get the emails a lot. They'll say, well, gosh, my glucose is 40. Am I okay? Well, the next question is, how do you feel? I feel fine. What's your ketones? 8? Yep. Meaning their ketones rates burning fat like crazy, which made the ketones go up and their glucose is plummeting. They're in massive autophagy. But anything over that 1-to-1 ratio is where you want to be. So we use that number to see how metabolically fit people are and how well their mitochondria are working and how much we can push them into a fast. So, again, whoever's in front of me, the same rules apply, right? We want to start into a low carb keto type of diet. Let's check their metabolic fitness and then push them from there. Does that help?
I love that. No, that's so good. Thank you so much. Does that answer the question there, Marta? Cool. So let's do something fun here. Assume that money isn't enough. It's not a concern. And we can integrate whatever we want to live as long as we possibly can. What would you start like biohacking and experimenting with, with longevity?
I love the question. I would do stem cells, IV expanded cells twice a year, which I do.
I love it.
Yeah, look, expanded cells IV work better than non-expanded just because you need a lot. So that you have to do in Mexico. You don't need to go to Mexico for stem cells. If you're going to get stem cells in your knee, you can get a non-expanded cell. But if you're going to do IV, it's going to work better expanded. Rafael Gonzalez, the guy I mentioned, he's doing a new opening in Cabo. We're doing a seminar, top stem cell people in the world. Isaac, remind me to invite your group. Y'all would love it.
I would love that.
Gary Brecka's speaking. I'm speaking. Raphael's speaking. I mean, it's going to be amazing. But y'all would love it, and everything is discounted. See, if you schedule ahead, you'll be able to get the expanded cells that Gary gets, I get. And then also the other thing that I would do twice a year is natural killer cells. I briefly mentioned them. So you take your own natural killer cells. You kind of know this. These are immune cells that get rid of viruses, which lowering viral counts is a big deal for many different conditions, by the way. So just doing that has massive anti-aging effects, but obviously it lowers senescent cells dramatically. So you take your own natural killer cells, you expand them. It takes about 3 weeks, and then they put them back into you. So let's say they take 20 million out. When they put them back in, it's 2 to 4 billion, and they just crush your. You can watch, like
Wow.
you can do methylation, DNA methylation testing, telomere testing. You can watch all of those tests change dramatically, with that combination of natural killer cells and stem cells. So it works. It works for sure. So I would do that if money weren't an issue. I definitely would have a hyperbaric in my house. I definitely, hyperbaric again still applies to hormesis, but very, very effective. I would definitely be utilizing different ozone therapies, which I do for different things.
What's just share a couple.
The new ozone therapy is the EBU, as it's called. It's the ozone dialysis, where they take your blood out. I just had it done last week. They take your blood out of this arm, so to speak, and then put it back into this arm. But in the meantime, it runs through different wavelengths of light, UV, runs through a filter. That's why they call it ozone dialysis. And then they also ozonate it, and then they run it back through. But before they run it back through, they'll put methylene blue in, and then they'll put some red light. So it lowers pathogen loads, but it's oxidizing the system. Doing EBU a couple times a year would be something else I would throw in, right? These ozone treatments. Yeah. So there's a lot, but here's the thing. This is probably a really good time to say this. Our space has gone biohack crazy. I'll be the first to say that none of that counts, and it's probably even a waste of a lot of money if you really are still very neurotoxic. All of your efforts really need to go into cellular detox, really doing it right. That's what I teach. That's how I got my life back. That's Isaac will tell you. That's everything I've been teaching for Isaac since you've met me over 20 years ago. My message hasn't changed.
Even my own story, I was sick. I had jaundice in my hands. I was going through chiropractic school, and I would fall asleep in class regularly. And I was like, what is happening with me? And Dan came and spoke. He did an MSH test on me and some other tests. And I came back mega toxic to mold. And then he came into my apartment complex, and literally you could see the black mold on the walls. And I was living in that for over a year. I would have like a bowl of oatmeal, and it would affect me so much. It was like feeding the mold in my body that my eyesight would go blurry. And it felt like when I looked out the window, it looked like a Picasso painting of like the trees were melting together. And it was crazy, or more of like a Van Gogh painting. And so I just took what he said seriously. I had mercury fillings all in my mouth. got those properly removed by an IOMT dentist, chelated properly. Literally, it transformed my life. In fact, I was embarrassed to get married. I didn't tell you this, Dan, but I was embarrassed to get married because I had chronic like eczema on my legs, and I had various issues on my belly, and like I didn't want her to see me naked, honestly.
Yeah.
And so, going through this protocol, like I can remember how I felt when I asked Erica's hand in marriage, and I was like asking confidently because I was just like, man, like I have addressed all these issues. Like my body feels good, it looks good, all my skin problems that I've been struggling with for 14 plus years are gone. And then the major issues that you helped me with, I mean, Dan, you've literally helped to shift and transform my entire life and trajectory in life. And Dan was the one that told me not to just do practice, to go and start coaching doctors, which I've done. So I did it with him initially, and now with HEA. But I'm really grateful for you. Thank you so much for your time, brother. Last question. Tell us, like, a couple tips of building the fastest growing natural health business in America.
Well, just like anything else, right? I'm dedicated to the message. The message is more important now than ever, right? For such a time as this, right? I got sick, and so without saying, that helps the most. There's a great need. God's behind it. The world needs what he showed me. And so that's huge. But again, I'm one of the things you learn from Isaac, right, is you have to put the right people around you, because although I'm great at communicating this, the business part, not so much. So you can't be everything. The mistake that people make is trying to be everything. And the more talented you are, oftentimes the worse that problem is, because you are good at a lot of things, but you're not great at a lot of things. So, hiring the right people, surrounding yourselves with the right people. And I find that even in a small business, that's still critical, because you still need someone who's better than you at marketing or whatever it is, right? So in having an EA, an assistant, even at a small level of business, can be one of the best expenses you have, because they can fill in for all of your weaknesses, and then you're not doing a lot of things you should never be doing, right?
Yeah.
If you don't love it, you're not amazing at it, don't do it, right? If you love cutting your grass and it does something for you, cut your grass. But otherwise, why are you cutting your grass? But that's obviously a crazy example, but we're doing a lot of other things, in our businesses, in our space, that we shouldn't. And, hiring an assistant could be the first step of avoiding a lot of that, honestly. But then again, looking at your business, and then hiring all your weaknesses out eventually. So yeah, that would be it.
If let's say they're solo entrepreneurs, would you say consistency is the number one thing that would get you to where you're at right now? I mean, with social media, you hate social media like I do, but it's like you're killing it on social media, and you'll be over multi seven figures soon.
Yeah, no, next week we'll be at over 1 million.
Yeah, congrats, by the way.
Yeah, because we're growing about, depending on 10,000 to 20,000 followers every day, and we're at 950 right now. So that's crazy. I mean,
is a lot of that paid or organic, would you say?
That's zero paid. Zero.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's 100% organic. You don't want to boost, because it messes up your algorithm. And you can look if people are boosting, look at their engagement. Right now we're getting over 200 million views a day, over 200 million views a day in the last 3 months. I know, because Instagram just sent me the statistics yesterday. We got over 120 million views in the last 3 months. Yeah, that's that's not paying for followers. Look at how many views you get. You see someone has how did they get 5 million followers, and then they're only getting 200,000, 100,000 views on a video? It makes no sense, right? So that's how you can tell if someone's paid. So it doesn't work out in the long run for that. And actually, what happens, those people just drop off, and you have to pay again. So there's no benefit to doing that. You want it to be 100% organic. Honestly, I mean, social media, I hate it for many reasons, but the reason I really hated it, I was wrong about. I never thought in a minute you could communicate something worth value. I was wrong because I can't tell you how many people, someone just came up to me, didn't know me. I'm tongue scraping. Let me tell you what it's done for my gut. I did a
Wow.
simple video. I've tongue scraped for years, but how it stimulates nitric oxide, because the bacteria that stimulate and make nitric oxide, they're on your tongue. And that's why mouthwash, if you saw the studies on, a matter of fact, it's a video I just did. It won't come out for probably a week, but mouthwash is showing to raise blood pressure, even in healthy people. Why is it raising blood pressure? Because it kills the bacteria that are responsible for making nitric oxide. And then therefore it lowers nitric oxide and high blood pressure goes up. The opposite is true. If you tongue scrape, you can massively lower blood pressure. But more importantly, you get all these amazing benefits from tongue scraping morning and night. When I dug into the studies just to do that video, I went from doing it at night to morning and night. And anyways, this woman comes up to me and tells me how it transformed her, right? It's like, and my son's girlfriend yesterday said, oh my gosh, I haven't told you, like, how much tongue scraping has helped me. One video, 1 minute. The key though is doing it short. Most people, when I watch, they have overproduced videos. The algorithm doesn't even like it, right? So you have these fancy videos of this, that. The algorithm doesn't even favor it. The simpler, the better. That's right from the CEO of Instagram himself. So you'll see my videos are just simple, right? And they're typically a minute to a minute and a half. You never go over a minute and a half. If you go over a minute and a half, it favors your followers, but it defavors your people who don't follow you, which is how you end up with 5 million views on a video. So, the moment you go over a minute and a half, it goes as a post. And this is something new, by the way. So if you stay under a minute and a half, then it always goes as a reel. So it's very different. But anyway, so,
Wow.
so you have to communicate one, and here's the other mistake I made when I first did it. I was trying to communicate, because I'm a teacher, right? I was trying to communicate too many concepts because I felt it necessary for someone to really get this out of it. No, one concept, 1 minute, and get in, get out, and it's like, and that's it. And you'll grow a following. And look, you don't need to grow a huge following. If you just grow your little following, it still can be hugely powerful for your business.
Wow.
1
Wow.
minute, one concept. Garrett Gunderson, he was trying to do a lot of like more production type of videos and this, that. And number one, that's the other, I didn't give you the third component, volume. The algorithm wants to see the volume. So my son gets bonused if he gets 18 videos a week of me. I thought it was impossible. What? Are you kidding me? I'm not doing 18 videos a week. Okay. It helped him. So, all right, let's step in. Right. So
Dude, that's what I need. I need to bonus my 6-year-old.
Yeah, forced myself to do 18 videos a week. I take 1 day a week and I do them all. During the week, I just kind of write down little ideas I have, and people give me some ideas. But
How long does it take you? Like an hour?
nah, it takes me about 3 hours to do the 18 videos, maybe even 4 hours, depending on,
Do you change your shirt or same shirt and everything?
I do same shirt, 3 videos for the shirt. Sometimes I'll do 4. So you'll see
Nice.
that blue shirt, right? That gray shirt, right? It's like, yeah, okay. So, but yeah, I mean, that's how I do it. You could do 9, but look, the average, like, keep it short, one concept in volume, right? Commit to 9 videos a week, right? Commit to 1 a day. You will increase, just by doing 1 a day. But if you make them too long, they're too elaborate, you're not going to do 18. Volume is more important. I just gave you the key. I just gave you the keys to social media.
So
right?
the three things, keep it less than 1.5 minutes, volume, 18 videos a week. And then
in 18 might be even overkill, right?
and then simple. And then simple, right?
Yeah, one concept. Yeah.
One concept. So perfect. I love that. Super awesome.
And by the way, here's the other thing. We are heady. We are too in depth. My videos in the beginning were too to our niche. My videos in the beginning, you all would have liked them better, but that's not your target. I went on a cruise for the first time in my life not that long ago. And I said, I am not reaching these people. And I started meeting some of these people. And I'll tell you, I wasn't reaching them, and I had a goal to reach them. Simple. If you think it's stupid, it's probably a good video. And I don't say that. My son made me do a video on why plastic cutting board. Well, that's so stupid, right? It's like this. It was like 6 million views. Just don't use a plastic cutting board. What? It's like, oh my God. It's like, I mean, it's like ridiculous. I mean, it's like, that's how stupid simple they can be, and they just take off. So don't ever think that you have to go. Matter of fact, the more complicated, the worse they don't even do anything.
Dude, so 4 points. I love it. Dude,
That's
you're the best. Dan, I love you. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for listening to the Longevity Leaders Podcast. Our Longevity Leaders community is on mission to transform 100 million lives by 2040. If you enjoyed this show, please share this with somebody that you know, especially another doctor or physician, but also click that follow button. Until next time, stay strong and live long.